Although not Scotland's capital, Glasgow is famously thought of as the country's musical hub. With award-winning live venues and an endless supply of buskers, it's impossible to escape the city's musical side. But with record sales in decline, is a career in music a realistic aspiration? Every year, thousands of hopeful singers visit Glasgow in order to audition for a host of televised talent shows. I spoke to some unsuccessful contestants after the most recent auditions.
To be honest with you, you either want it to happen or you don't want it to happen. And determination, I mean, look at like Leona Lewis, say, she's absolutely massive now.
This is the first time I've done The Voice, but I have done X Factor before, yeah, a couple of times. I would like to keep coming back and trying again and again. If you don't get anywhere, it's, you know, the only bad thing is it's just a no, that's it. It's not any worse than that. No matter what, if you win or don't win, like, they always find something to do for them.
You look at some of the auditions and they're unbelievable singers, you know what I mean? And I'm like, realistically, I'm not anywhere near as good as these guys, but I know I've got a nice voice, and maybe if I don't know, keep looking at me, I'll try it anyway. For the experience, because I'd never do something like this, so just go and do it. Even the ones that are like, that were that good, aren't even really that tremendous, I mean, and they're the ones that won it, I mean, but you still get the other ones like JLS, blah blah blah, like guys that never won it and have successful careers, and that's it.
For many, TV shows like The X Factor, Britain's Got Talent and The Voice are their only real hope of ever becoming successful. But just a few miles away, all around the same city, many bands and artists are working to make their musical mark on the world the old-fashioned way, without the help of Saturday night television. One such band are young four-piece Three Blind Wolves, who have been playing together since 2008.
Hi, my name's Ross Clark.
Hi, I'm David.
Hi, my name's Kevin.
Hi, I'm Fergus. I play drums in the band.
I play guitar in Three Blind Wolves.
I sing and play guitar in Three Blind Wolves.
I play bass in Three Blind Wolves.
Despite well-received record releases, regular gigs and a dedicated fan base, Three Blind Wolves have not yet found themselves in a position to give up their day jobs. Each member holds down a part-time job, completely unrelated to their music careers.
I'm a part-time play worker. I work where the monkey sleeps in the kitchen making sandwiches and stuff.
I am a phone and laptop repair technician.
I'm a bartender, I work in Meursault.
With work during the day, rehearsals in the evening and live shows at night, the band must also find the time to write and record new material. I visited Ross's portable home studio to find out how they manage.
So this is my home studio setup. We have a nice guitar here, and I'm pretty much recording everything on my laptop with Ableton. Got a nice wee keyboard here to make nice sounds. We have an audio interface back here. It's been useful learning how to record our own music just for experimental purposes. It's quite costly to start experimenting in the studio.
While the band have learned to cut costs, making enough money to pursue their dreams is obviously still a concern.
I think music's a full-time job, but we need part-time jobs to support that. It's a difficult one because it's very easy and very, I think sometimes people can be very, very presumptuous in thinking that, oh, you know, in order to get everything you want in music, you have to just do it all the time. And like, to be able to do music 24/7, you have to be of a sort of privileged position, I would think, because we kind of always sort of torn in the balance between having enough money to have a quality of life and trying to get our band into the position where that can provide sort of earnings for that. But I mean, it's always a tussle.
Despite uncertainty about the future, Three Blind Wolves don't consider giving up music to be an option.
We have an immediate plan. Keep making albums and go on tour and be in the band, really. Like the long-term plan would that just be for that not to stop. For me, I think we kind of consider ourselves as like lifers, you know. Like certainly for speaking for myself, I don't really have a end point and when stopping to make music. So hopefully, if it just gets better and easier for me to make a living.
As with many, the band's main source of income derives from merchandise and ticket sales. But what is the next step towards a bigger profit?
We've kind of like got pockets of success. We're doing quite well in Holland. There's a lot more interest in Germany. In the UK market's quite difficult, which we've found, and there's a lot of interest in America, although it's quite costly to go to America. So basically, just the next step is just to make the best record they possibly can, because I think they all know and they all feel that they can make better music than what they've actually recorded so far. I think when they made the last record, they were stronger as a live band than they were as recording artists, and I think they're now getting better in the studio, and I think you'll probably see that in the next album.
Just for these guys. Two members of the Scottish independent music scene who have succeeded in making music their full-time occupation met me to reminisce about their less than desirable former day jobs.
Worked in the shoe shop. Worked in the shoe shop.
It's all pretty unglamorous stuff for
It's
me.
cleaner in a gallery.
Worked in a record shop, but not a cool record shop. Worked in a book shop, not a cool book shop. I was a labourer for a while. There was nothing that I found myself particularly driven to do before I started making music, you know. You get a lot of people asking you, you know, do you not think you would have made it by now if you were going to do it? And you just don't want to have these conversations
that's the sort
with
of
people.
perception. People have a really strange perception about.
It's my least favourite conversation to have even to this day. Like,
yeah, me too.
you meet aunties or uncles that you don't see very often at Christmas and stuff, and you're like, all right, you're still making music. It's just, you know, I've not seen you on the One show. You must be, you know, you don't think you should maybe stop doing this kind of thing?
You can see that going on. It's maybe embarrassing to have that conversation because it's something that goes around in our heads.
Well, yeah, of course it does. But it's a thing that goes around everyone. Like, it doesn't matter what profession you're in. It becomes like, I think it's a really rude question to ask.
It is rude.
You know,
it's not up for
this
discussion.
idea. No.
But when I ask my own rude question about where the bulk of their profit comes from, Dan and Neil seem slightly stumped.
Live fees maybe.
It's really tricky. It's really tricky to say. On paper, like financially and career-wise, it looks probably ridiculous to someone who's not artistically minded to generalise it. We both make pop music that isn't popular. We do it full-time when there's no guarantee of a full-time income. To
put it into kind of more stark terms, I made more money working in a shoe shop on just more than part-time hours than I've ever made making music.
Since filming, former Scottish Album of the Year nominee Neil has chosen to drop the pseudonym Meursault, too often mistaken for a full band name. He is now hoping to pursue a more affordable career as a solo artist. Freelance music journalist Nicola Megan doesn't think Neil will be the last to go solo in the coming years. She met me for a rare break in the sunshine to share her views.
The economy is sort of dictating the way music goes to an extent, because it's suggesting that if you want to maintain it, you sort of have to operate in some sort of solo guise. So then the group dynamic's lost a little bit. Bands that I speak to, bearing in mind I might speak to bands who are upcoming, who maybe are on like maybe their first or their second album, they tend to have day jobs. Yeah, a good number of them will have some other sideline of income because music won't really make anyone money anymore. There is an unspeakable or unspoken magic about certain artists that just captures people's imagination or their faith, I guess. And for whatever reason, that doesn't always translate. So yeah, you will have two bands who ostensibly play the same music. There is just something magical about certain performers or lyricists or voices, and they're not necessarily technically the best ones.
Back in Glasgow, Kevin from Three Blind Wolves agreed to squeeze in a brief interview on his walk from work to rehearsals.
I mean, I don't hate it. It's all right. I just like fix people's phones and laptops and provide technical support for people. Yeah, it's not really where I see myself in another like 3 or 4 years' time. I originally wanted to be a doctor. I actually did work experience in a hospital. Studied quite hard to get into university, and then I just decided at the last minute that it wasn't really for me. Also at that time I just started playing gigs and I found that a lot more enjoyable. I actually started university when I was 18, but I did an English literature course initially in Glasgow, but I absolutely hated it. I just wasn't in the right frame of mind to be studying at that time. I wish I'd just spent my time travelling or just focusing entirely on music. So now I'm trying to focus my energies on what I'm really passionate about.
While many blame the internet for the decline of the music industry, online arts editor and journalist Nick Mitchell believes the web has only opened more doors for aspiring bands.
I think obviously the internet has changed everything. I think it's opened up a lot of opportunities, so you can get your music out there. You don't need to go through a label. I think the challenge is to do it in such a way that you can get noticed. Whereas before you might have been up against, I don't know, a dozen bands in your local city. Now there might be 100, 150 who've all got their own kind of SoundCloud pages. They've all got YouTube pages, and so it's a bit like how do you get your music across? But I think it just does come down to quality. That's what any music journalist will be looking for.
Admitting defeat after years of hard work and moderate success would be a blow for any artist. But for Edinburgh singer-songwriter Tony Taylor, who recorded under the name Ex-Lion Tamer, the cons began to heavily outweigh the pros.
Firstly, the little record label that put my EP out never really had enough money to put the album out, and I would have had to have ended up stumping up for some or almost all of the mastering costs and maybe a lot of the mixing. Secondly, I just got completely blocked. Like I wrote like 4 or 5 songs, and I thought these are good. I'll put these on an EP, and most of them went on the EP. And then after that, I was always chasing myself to try and write better ones, and I just thought I couldn't. Also, I never liked the way my stuff sounds. It always sounded to me like a bit tinny and not good. But that's again another knock-on process of not having enough money to record it in like Abbey Road or get it produced by whatever. If you have to do it at home, it has a certain like homespun charm about it. But it never, like to this day, I still don't really listen back to anything I've ever done really, because I just sit and nitpick it.
After originally studying archaeology at Edinburgh University, Tony went on to work in various record shops for years, while simultaneously pursuing a career in music.
Money was definitely a factor. A gig could bring you in 50 quid depending on who's there. If you play 3 of them a month, that's a nice bonus, you know. Radio session would be about 100 quid, and because there's only me, the money goes straight to me. And then some of the PRS stuff, like when you get played on the radio, if you get on a decent radio station, like you'll get about 30 quid a play or something like that. So it's all good. I still occasionally get a check through, and it's like, what? I've been on blah blah, and there's like 15 quid there or something. But yeah, it's just not enough to survive on.
In 2010, Ex-Lion Tamer appeared on BBC radio presenter Vic Galloway's list of 50 Scottish artists to watch, alongside Three Blind Wolves and 2013 Say award winner R.M. Hubbard. The publicity and consequent buzz around Tony's EP Neon Hearts prompted anticipation among music journalists and bloggers for a full-length album that, sadly, would never come.
If I'd put an album out, I could maybe have got onto a slightly bigger record label, and they maybe would have given me a chance to do a second album. But I always used to be quite prejudiced towards people who put their own stuff out with their own money, because I always used to think, well, if you're doing that, you can't be good enough to get on a record label. So I kind of tried to avoid doing that. But yeah, there's probably a lesson there for everyone. I just think it's maybe a young person's game, and playing gigs and touring in inverted commas on your own is really shattering. It's really tiring.
Tony retired from the music industry in 2011 and returned to his roots as an archaeologist, a job he feels is just as creative and badly paid as music.
Most all archaeologists will say the same thing, that they're not in it for the money. It is almost like another side of the music thing, because it still is something that people follow as their kind of passion, as opposed to just picking up a paycheck at the end of the day. So yeah, I'd never thought about that. There may be almost two sides of the same coin.
Well-known music blogger Matthew Young was impressed by ex-Lion Tamer's EP back in 2009.
Tony, he had a really good reception within certainly the amateur press for his first releases. The infrastructure within Scotland being such a small place, you can get quite high up the ladder quite quickly if you've got a few good songs and people are excited about seeing you. But putting out an album and being a full-time musician is a really tough thing to do.
In 2008, Matthew founded Song by Toad Records alongside his blog, an independent but wide-reaching label based in Edinburgh.
I don't think labels are becoming irrelevant, because you still need experience of releasing a record. That track record within the industry that means people will bother opening your emails is really important. A network of relationships of people who trust your taste enough to actually check out what you've put out. That kind of thing you absolutely cannot replicate as a band. You need a few more people on your side just for the sheer amount of work it takes to release a successful record. But I think record labels are losing a lot of control of the revenue streams, particularly at an independent level. A lot of labels can't even pay for recording time anymore, so the bands pay for that. And if the bands are paying for it, they own the copyright in that recording. So that means that all of the publishing gets dealt with between the publisher and the band, and the label has absolutely nothing to do with it. And that's a very important revenue stream at the moment. A lot of labels have no real way of capitalising on any live income. If bands have got any common sense, or if they've got any funding, they should handle their own merch, because that way they keep all the profit and there's a fair profit margin in there. If a record label is just licensing somebody else's intellectual property, manufacturing records, publicising it and releasing it, that's actually a very, very limited financial model. So for a record label to be able to make a lot of money out of that, you have to sell an absolute ton of records.
While Matthew is passionate about his label and his signed artists, for him, Song by Toad is not about making a profit.
If I was doing this and I had to maintain, if I had to continue to earn a living for a family, it would still be amateur. There's no question about that whatsoever. I wouldn't have quit my job. I wouldn't even have considered it.
For Matthew, high-earning TV talent shows are a world away from his or any other independent record label.
I think that the world of actual musicians making music and pop culture are two very, very different things. And I think there was a long period where they overlapped an awful lot. And I think what we've seen recently is that they've just divorced themselves completely. And most of the industry is so far away from that level of investment and that level of ubiquity and that level of presence in pop culture that effectively the two are totally different.
On my final morning with Three Blind Wolves, Ross introduced me to his other great passion, fishing, and told me more about his plans and hopes for the future.
I'm not like sort of going for fame and stardom. I think if you want to be serious about it, you have to consider it like a business. You know, you're running a business. I mean, I think certainly when no one, you know, so few bands get like signed to like big labels these days, like you've got to kind of set yourself up as a business. Certainly from speaking from my own perspective, I think I definitely want it to be a full-time job where I can just play music and fish all the time. As Bob Dylan says, you've always got to be in a state of becoming, so we're never happy.
That evening, I watched the band play live to a rapturous audience at Glasgow's famous Oran Mor.
I don't really think it is a dream. I think it's more something that I need to do. I think considering it as a dream is like maybe put in a bit negative context.
Three Blind Wolves and many others in all sectors of the music industry don't expect to become rich or famous overnight, but they still persevere. For these people, music is not a dream or a job, but a calling.